Mighty Ape is Australia's entertainment and pop culture superstore with everything from movies, music, games, toys, books, hobbies and more. Mighty Ape is your one-stop shop for the things that matter most. They constantly have hot deals and exclusive promos. And if you visit their website on the click-through banner on fakechef.net's homepage, then your purchase will help support Good Movie Monday. Mighty Ape, Australia's entertainment and pop culture superstore.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning!
Morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
You mean to wish me a good morning? What do you mean that it is a good morning whether I want it or not?
Please go away. Let me speak for the love of God!
Well, here we are, Ben, stuck inside Zoom again, thanks to another fucking lockdown. How are you, sir?
Good. I'm getting a little bored of my own house, to be honest.
Bored in the house, and I'm in the house bored.
Yeah. I thought it was understood when I came on board the podcast that there would be no rapping.
Well, look, before we do start, in the spirit of today's show, just a reminder that turn off your lapel mic when you go take a piss later, okay?
I thought that was also in my contract that all my bowel movements and would be recorded for posterity.
There's always that fine line between, like, too many fart gags in one scene and then not enough fart gags in one scene. Yeah. Shit, man, does this music take you back?
It does. It does indeed. Takes me way back.
Does it? Do you remember what the first spoof movie you ever saw was?
That's a good question. Probably Flying High. Or no, maybe it was one of the Naked Gun movies. I'm actually not sure.
I reckon Flying High was mine.
Yeah, I mean, because Flying High was always on TV, so I would have just caught bits of it. But I remember not being that into it because I was completely unfamiliar with all the things it was taking the piss out of. And like a lot of the jokes just went over my head, whereas the Naked Gun movies, even though I didn't know half the things that they were taking the piss out of, it was just funny.
That's right. Well, speaking of Naked Gun, the theme music you are listening to is from the Naked Gun, one of the great comedy spoofs. Man, I stumbled across some absolute doozy movies when I was preparing for this show. In fact, I'm going to use one of them as my recommendation. Surely, man, you're like, with a man of your wit, you must love a really good spoof movie, mate.
I do. And look, I watched a ton of movies for this episode. Unfortunately, I can't talk about all of them, but I will. Can I just list some of the ones that I watched? I'm going to do that. I'd be very interested to see if there are any doubles with anyone out with you or with any of the segmenters, the boneheads or anything like that.
Yep.
So
yes, we'll get to them in just a minute.
Okay.
Okay.
Right.
Cool. Well, I don't know about anywhere else in the world, but down here, the word spoof does have another pronunciation that was very popular in high school.
Yes, indeed.
Well, I've been really looking forward to this episode. What a treat this is. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you listen from. This is Good Movie Monday, the weekly podcast presented by fakechef.net, home of the nerdy cinematic ramblings. Every week we babble on about movie stuff, and this week is an absolute banger. My name is Glenn Cochran, and if you're looking for a good time, then I have an assortment of souvenirs, novelties, and party tricks for your enjoyment. And here with me, as he is every week, is Ben Helwig, who thinks he's pretty funny, but surely he can't be serious. Hey, mate.
Yahoo!
So if you are blind and you didn't see the banner of today's show, or perhaps you're deaf and you're not even listening at all, then you might not have realized that today's show is all about movie spoofs, the brand of comedy parody that takes the piss out of the more serious movies. And today we have one of the godfathers of the genre, David Zucker, as our special guest. He has the privilege of talking to me, so stick around because we're going to talk about all manner of things, including the Kentucky Fried Movie, Two Girls, One Cup, and a Zoom Guide to Masturbation. So also on today's show, we are debuting a brand new segment, which I'm really excited about. And in turn, we're going to introduce you to a new member to the team. Chloe from the podcast Movie Night with the Ritchie Girls will be squeezing herself into the show to weigh in on today's theme. And of course, our regular segments from Jarret Gahan, Guillermo Troncoso, Adam Ross, Bonehead Weekly, all coming up. It's a banger of a show. Let's get cracking.
We'll start now, then we'll begin.
Did you hear the starter pistol? Keep your ears open.
All right, now we'll begin.
Mate, well, we'll get to some recommendations in a few minutes, but it must be said that before David Zucker and Jerry Zucker and Jim Abrams came along, the parody genre was pretty much dominated by Mel Brooks and Carl Reiner, not to mention maybe Monty Python. Spaceballs and Young Frankenstein do come to mind as some of the biggest spoofs of all time. But why the fuck is no one talking about Dracula Dead and Loving It?
I think a lot of people didn't think it was very good.
I do. I think it's great.
Yeah, but anyone who's listened to more than one episode of this show understands how questionable your taste is.
Oi. So what's your what would your sort of favorite Mel Brooks film be, if I was to ask you, which I am?
Probably History of the World Part 1.
We watched that in high school. We tricked our history teacher into letting us watch that one.
Oh, really? Like, this is legit. Legit.
Yeah.
I was always very disappointed that there was no History of the World Part 2. I was always
Hitler on Ice.
Hitler on Ice, Jews in Space. Like, I was, I was really looking forward to that.
He did so many great parodies: High Anxiety, Silent Movie, Young Frankenstein, Robin Hood Men in Tights, Blazing Saddles, amongst others. And Carl Reiner, of course, did some bangers too. But they were not so much parody, but stuff like The Man with Two Brains and Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid, Fatal Instinct, The Jerk.
Ocean's 11.
Funniest one of them all.
Funniest of them all.
All right, well, let's recommend a couple of movies in a minute, but first, I guess we'll check out what's coming out on Blu-ray, DVD, and what is it? UHD. Yeah, that'll do.
UHF.
That too, soon.
Hey, this is Jarret and welcome to PE Class. Now, I'm going to start off with a little news this week, and that is Roadshow are releasing The Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard on home entertainment on August 25th. Now, they'll be releasing it on Blu-ray and DVD. There'll be no 4K SKU this time around, which is a shame given that they put the first one out on 4K. However, if you are a 4K enthusiast like myself, you can import it from the US as it will be releasing a week earlier on August 17th via Lionsgate, and it will have a Dolby Atmos track. Now, if you enjoyed the first one, this is pretty much more of the same. You've got the same director returning, Aussie Patrick Hughes, and the same principal cast returning, Ryan Reynolds, Samuel L. Jackson, and Selma Hayek, and this time they're joined by Antonio Banderas and Morgan Freeman. Look, it's a bit of fun, and it should look spectacular on 4K Ultra HD if you import it like I will be. Then coming out on 4K Ultra HD locally on that same date, August 25th, via Studio Canal as part of their Classics Remastered series, is Akira Kurosawa's Ran in a 3-disc set. Now that comprises of one 4K Ultra HD and 2 Blu-rays, and this set is loaded with special features including a feature-length documentary on the making of the film. And the 4K restoration is accompanied by Dolby Vision and HDR10 on the 4K. Then moving on to September 1st, Universal Sony Pictures Home Entertainment will be releasing Star Trek The Original 4 movie collection. Odd that they're only doing the first 4 films and not the first 6 films, given it's like the original cast in the first 6 films before they cross over with Next Gen and 7 with Generations. But in any case, they're doing the 4 movie collection. It's coming out September 1st. It's coming out on 4K Ultra HD, and it will have Dolby Vision and HDR10. It's going to port all the legacy special features over and will have an addition of an isolated score track on all 4 of the films. However, it will not have Dolby Atmos in any one of the films, which is a damn shame and a missed opportunity in my books. Instead, it'll just be going with the previous Dolby True HD 7.1 tracks from the previous Blu-ray releases. Then, last but not least, Escape Room Tournament of Champions is coming out on September 22nd, and thankfully it's coming out on Blu-ray and DVD, care of Universal Sony Pictures Home Entertainment. So if you don't get to check that one out in theaters at the moment, at least you know it's coming to home in September 22nd. Now, I'm only going to be talking about one major release this week, and I'll briefly mention another. So this week, coming out on 4K Ultra HD, Blu-ray and DVD, is the recent Mortal Kombat movie. Now, I'll talk about the 4K Ultra HD. Basically, this thing is loaded with special features. In terms of the actual film itself, it's got Dolby Atmos, Dolby Vision, and HDR10. But there is so many special features on this release. It is literally ridiculous. Aside from deleted scenes, there's an anatomy of a scene which has 7 featurettes and breaks down the film from the storyboard to production, post-production phase. Then you've actually got 11 featurettes on the characters in the film. Then you've got from game to movie featurette. I think there's like another 2 featurettes, one of which actually has all the Easter eggs within the film that, show you ties to particular things from the video games, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, this is a full-on release, so if you were a fan of this movie, you will not be disappointed with this release. And personally, I can't wait to see what it'll look like at home on 4K. Then the last release I will mention that's coming out this week, it's the Michael Bay produced COVID-23 drama thriller Songbird. Now, you'd be forgiven if you haven't seen or heard of this film, because it was shot during the pandemic, during COVID-19. Not that we're not still in it, but during the height of the pandemic last year it was shot. Then it kind of came out, no one saw it, no one really talked about it. I caught up with it, and to be honest, look, this film's really confused. It doesn't really know what it wants to be, and it never really succeeds at doing one thing well. It's honestly a bit of a drainer. It's just a missed opportunity, because you can see a lot of money went into this movie, and it's just come off being I don't know. Maybe you'll enjoy it, but I highly doubt it. Anyway, Songbird, that's coming out this week from Roadshow. Unfortunately, I can't tell you whether it will be porting all the special feature content from the US release that Universal Pictures put out, or whether it will be bare bones, as Roadshow were unable to supply that information in time. Anyway, that's it for me for this week. Until next time, stay physical.
And of course, Mortal Kombat does hit shelves this week, and if you're a brand new listener to this show, which I suspect some of you will be, then go back a few weeks and you can listen to our episode where we spoke to Simon McCoy, the director of Mortal Kombat. Ben and I also recorded a reaction video to Mortal Kombat after seeing it at the cinemas, so you can find that on our social media pages. In fact, just go back and look up goodmoviemonday.com and you can do a deep dive into everything we do on the show. Cheers to Jarret for that update. Jarret, you can find him on Monster Pictures and Monster Fest social media pages, so go find him, see what he's up to. Enough fucking around, Ben. We do have some movies to recommend, but boy, let's. I like to explore the rarities and the obscurities quite often on this show, and I will be going with the lesser known ones today. Perhaps my first one will be the highest of the profiles, but let's run through some honourable mentions first. As you mentioned before, you have some. Do you want to go for it?
Okay. I'll start it off. I'm just going to run through them quickly. Like I did watch a lot, and I trimmed a lot out of this list of ones that were kind of like, because I wasn't sure if they counted as, because they weren't actually parodies. They were just kind of stupid, breaking the fourth wall comedies,
like slapstick.
Well, not like slap, but like ones where they talk to the camera, or they it's like they're smarter than the material kind of comedies, if you know what I mean.
Sure.
Which is very common in a lot of the David Zucker and Mel Brooks kind of parodies, but these weren't actually parodies of actual movies. They were just those kind of comedies. So I trimmed a lot of those out. So I'll list these up, and just put your hand up if you've seen any of them. All right. I'm going to go through them quite quick. Wet Dream on Elm Street, The Flintbones, Clockwork Orgy, The Penetrator, Edward Penis Hands, This Is All the 407th, Prawn, A Tale of Two Titties, Everybody Does Raymond, Cliffbanger, Pulp Friction, Madam's Family, American Booty, Ace Ventura, Crack Detective, The Da Vinci Load, Dawson's Crack, Forrest Hump, Drill Bill, In Reapendence Day, Legally Boned, Inspector Gadget, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Quantum Deep, Saturday Night Beaver, Saving Ryan's Privates, Twin Cheeks, Buffy the Vampire Layer, The Texas Vibrator Massacre, White Men Can Hunt, The Whores Have Eyes, Womb Raider, and Fat to the Future.
And that's just from your personal collection.
I watched all of those this week. But I discarded them, and I've gone for three others that we'll discuss later in the show.
Far out. Well, I was going to say like Silence of the Hams and National Lampoon's Loaded Weapon 1.
Never heard of them, Glenn.
All right, well, let's sorry, tickled my funny bone there, mate. which is what a good spoof episode should do.
They're all the spoof films. They're all spoofs. All of those films are spoofs.
So let's go back to 1989, a movie that I probably rented more than any other movie in the history of me renting movies. In Australia, we knew it as The Vidiot from UHF, which is, of course, Weird Al Yankovic's UHF. Possibly the single most quotable movie I can think of. It's what a showcase this was for Weird Al. It sort of incorporated a lot of his stage work and TV gags all into one movie. And it involved parodies of Raiders of the Lost Ark and Beverly Hillbillies and Rambo, Gandhi too, Conan the Librarian. Do you remember Conan the Librarian? Don't you know the Dewey Decimal System?
I really remember, what was it, the Wheel of Fortune ripoff, where he was
Wheel of Fish.
Wheel of Fish, that's right, and you get to suck the fire hydrant hose. He goes, ooh.
No, that was Stanley Spadowski's Clubhouse.
Oh.
Get it right. But what I loved, like you couldn't do some of these gags anymore because Wheel of Fish was hosted by the little Asian guy and his name was Cooney. But best of all, like, it had a legitimate storyline going through it, which brought everything together. So all of the outrageous sketches made sense, and it was all about a guy whose uncle wins a really rundown sort of little TV station in a bet, and assigns his nephew Weird Al to take on the manager's duties, and he pulls one stupid idea out of another from his head, and suddenly all these dumb ideas become like they go gangbusters and become a ratings hit, and suddenly the big networks are all threatened by it, and it becomes sort of a war and a takedown. But I'll tell you what, yeah, you said Wheel of Fish there, but you had like Raoul's Animal Kingdom. Fucking hilarious. And yeah, Stanley Spadowski's Clubhouse, I think, is Michael Richards at possibly his funniest. I think this is the best thing he's ever done. Would you agree?
Well, up until he started doing stand-up, people called his stand-up on camera phone.
He came up with the Cooney joke.
Yeah, that does not surprise me.
But hilarious cameos too. You had Emo Phillips in there, and the Kipper Kids, and John Paragon, also Fran Drescher, and Victoria Jackson, Kevin McCarthy, David Proval, Billy Barty. It's such a loaded film, and hands down one of the funniest I've ever seen. I watch it regularly and I still get a kick out of it. Anyway, that's my first recommendation. What have you got lined up first?
Well, funnily enough, speaking of Billy Barty, he does pop up in this film. Mine's from 1987. It's a film called Crazy Legs.
Crazy Legs,
also known as Off the Mark. And it is a kind of a sport parody movie kind of thing. Kind of like they do a similar thing in Better Off Dead, when they're the two Asian guys in the kind of competing car are doing Wide World of Sports kind of rip-offs all the way through they're kind of in the races. And this is and that's one of the guys from Karate Kid. That's the bad guy from Karate Kid too, just in case there's any people who haven't seen Better Off Dead in a while.
The highlight of his career.
Yeah, that's right. And this movie was directed by Bill Berry, who the only other thing this guy has directed, which I only found out today and I really want to see, is called Black Brotherhood of Death. And it's about Black Vietnam vets who take on the Ku Klux Klan when they come back from Nam. Like, this sounds amazing. Though he has worked in as a producer on Leprechaun 3 and Night of the Demons 2. And
that sounds like a Spike Lee joint. It's like Black Klansman crossed with the Five Hoods.
Yeah, pretty much. I really can't wait to see it. And it's so basically this movie is about this kid played by Mark Neely, who has an accident, and it somehow does damages his spine, and the doctors tell him that basically what he's got is crazy legs, which means at random times his legs go crazy and he can't control them. So his parents who are both blind invite a Russian exchange kind of kid to come and live with them for a while, and this kid's like a real bully who just constantly gives him shit about his crazy legs. So So he gets super competitive and works out on a kind of a what do you call it, an exercise bike, and becomes an athlete and gets into triathlon. And then of course, fast forwards 20 years later, and that Russian kid happens to come over and is, funnily enough, a competitor in the triathlon, and he takes him on. Terry Farrell pops up. She's the kind of love interest from Star Trek Deep Space Nine and Becker and Legion, if you remember Legion. And she's a fellow kind of competitor. Also, what's his name? Clarence Gillard Jr. is another competitor. He's the black kid who wants to be white. In fact, his character's name is Johnny B. White. And people will probably remember Clarence from Die Hard. He's the computer nerd in Die Hard who works down at the entrance desk kind of thing. But Michael Berryman pops up. Billy Barty. I like Billy Barty. There's a great scene where where Mark Neely and Terry Farrell are on a date, and the waiter suggests that they order this thing with a little Russian dressing on the side, and then they roll out a cart with Billy Barty in a Cossack outfit, getting dressed and abusing them in Russian. That's the level of humor in Crazy Legs.
What other podcasts give people a Billy Barty marathon recommendation?
Yeah, I think if Billy Barty is not in it in an 80s parody, it wasn't really an 80s parody movie. But yeah, that's my first one, Crazy Legs, aka Off the Mark, 1987.
And I have no doubt that almost everybody listening will be writing that one down because that sounds insane. I've not even seen that one myself.
What's happening, everybody? It's Guillermo here again from ScreenRealm.com, Australia's favourite entertainment website covering all things movies and television. I'm here to tell you a little bit of what we've covered on Screen Realm over the past week, kicking off with Margot Robbie's long-gestating Barbie movie, which is finally on the way to becoming a reality. The film will be directed by Oscar-nominated filmmaker Greta Gerwig, a well-known actress in her own right who also directed widely acclaimed pictures Lady Bird and Little Women. Gerwig will also be co-writing the screenplay with Noah Baumbach, I think that's how you say his name, continuing a long-time collaborative relationship that has seen them work together on projects such as Frances Ha and Mistress America. This Barbie movie project has had a long stop-start journey to get to this point. Juno scribe Diablo Cody had been at one point hired to write it, then Amy Schumer was on board to both write and star, then Schumer left and Anne Hathaway entered talks to star. Looks like this is it though, with Margot Robbie on board to star as Barbie. No plot details are known as yet. The film is expected to enter production in early 2022 and likely hitting cinemas in 2023. Antonio Banderas is a surprise addition to the long-awaited next Indiana Jones movie. Filming is currently underway on the franchise's still untitled fifth film, which will bring back Harrison Ford as the iconic archaeologist/adventurer and feature a lineup that includes Mads Mikkelsen, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, Boyd Holbrook, Toby Jones, Thomas Kretschmann, and Shawnette Renee Wilson. Still no word on who Banderas will be playing in the film, which is currently being directed by James Mangold, known for Logan, Walk the Line, and Ford v Ferrari, among other films. Indy 5 is currently scheduled to hit Australian cinemas on July 28th and US cinemas on July 29th. 2022. We also had 3 movie reviews go up on the website. The first comes from Glenn for Major Grom Plague Doctor, a Russian vigilante, glossy, Hollywood-style blockbuster flick that's gone up on Netflix. I thought the trailer for this one looked pretty cool and flashy. And flashy is apparently all this film has got going for it. Glenn gave it 2 out of 5 stars. He wasn't very impressed, saying, "If bells and whistles are all you need from a comic book movie, Major Grom Plague Doctor may suffice. If you're looking for a story with weight, perhaps this isn't for you." And at a ridiculously arduous runtime of 137 minutes, it may take a few attempts to reach the end. Jump on Screen Realm to check out that complete review. The next review comes from Adam Fleet, and it's for a beautiful little drama called 9 Days. Adam absolutely loved this film, calling it a cinematic rumination on life that you need to experience. The film stars Winston Duke from Black Panther Us as an administrator in an existential no man's land, existing in a time and space outside of life as we know it. It's his job, along with the help of an assistant and friend, to vet a group of applicants vying for the chance to be born. That's the basic premise of this film, which has been getting great reviews, and Adam gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars, saying, and I quote, 9 Days is simultaneously uplifting and devastatingly sad. This is a unique, engaging, and often beautiful existential drama that neither the written description nor the trailer can do justice to. It is one of those movies you just need to experience. Now, 9 Days was supposed to open in Australian cinemas on July 15th, except for Sydney, and then Melbourne also went into lockdown, so I don't know. Look around for 9 Days when it opens. I suggest you see it. And the other review was by yours truly, and it was for Black Widow, the new Marvel film that serves as a goodbye to Scarlett Johansson's Natasha Romanoff, aka Black Widow. I wasn't blown away by the film, but I did enjoy it. Thought overall it was a solid Marvel film, serving perhaps better as an introduction to Florence Pugh's character, Yelena Belova, a character that will have much more to do in the MCU in future. I gave the film 3.5 out of 5 stars, screenrealm.com for that complete review. That about does for me, guys. Thanks as always for having me. Hope everyone's keeping safe and keeping their cool out there. Until next week, I'm out of here.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hail by the twilight's last gleaming, the bright stripes and broad stars in the perilous night? On the ramparts we watch, and the rocket's red glare, lots of bombs in the air, gave proof through the night that we still had a flag. Oh, say, does that flag banner wave over all the free in the home of the brave and the land of the free?
The comedy stylings of Leslie Nielsen, mate. That man was inherently funny. What a guy. But thanks to Guillermo for the update before that. Guillermo is from Screen Realm, Sydney-based movie site. Visit screenrealm.com to check out what's going on up there. And of course, you just heard the rendition of Star Spangled Banner brought to us by the legend himself, Leslie Nielsen. You're a fan. Tell me you're a fan.
A big fan. I'm just shocked that he was 100% like a straight actor before the Zuckers found him and turned him into a comedy legend.
That right there is what made one of their films all the more hilarious, is the fact that they use the straight people, which David's going to talk about in a minute. But that does bring us to our chat. The man who redefined comedy, along with his brother Jerry Zucker and their mate Jim Abrahams, plus Pat Proft, who's written some of the most iconic comedies of all time. So David and I do talk about a wide range of things. But Ben, let's just focus for a minute on some of their stuff. Like, what comes to mind first and foremost? I guess you've kind of answered the question when you hear about a David Zucker film.
Yeah, I mean, I think Flying High, really, and Naked Gun. And Leslie Nielsen is like synonymous with him, even though they'd already made a couple of movies before he came onto the scene.
And he just became like the stalwart of their stuff. Like, he even appeared in the Scary Movies and, American Carol and all those movies.
And it's like when you watch Flying High, I guess his character is played by the guy from Mission Impossible.
Yeah, Robert Graves.
Yeah, Robert Graves. His character is basically would become Leslie Nielsen in everything else.
I know, and yet they're both in it together, and what a dynamic duo they are. But look, it is a huge legacy, and in addition to the movies they all made together, they went and made all kinds of solo projects. So Abrahams went on to make the 2 Hot Shots movies. He also made Jane Austen's Mafia, which the origins of that may lie somewhere within Flying High too, but listen to the chat and you'll hear all about that. And then Jerry Zucker went on and made a couple of serious films. He made Ghost and First Night before he returned to comedy with Rat Race. But let's hear it all from the horse's mouth. In fact, pause the show right now, grab a cup of coffee, strap in for the next 15 minutes or so, because we're going to step into David Zucker's world.
Doctors say he's got a 50-50 chance of living, though there's only a 10% chance of that.
G'day, David. What a thrill it is to be chatting with you today. How are you, sir?
I'm really fine. I mean, it's like the temperature, it's like about 74 degrees. It's just,
It's good.
yeah. Yeah,
It's
I have my own little forest here. Yeah.
Yeah, no, where I am, it's you gotta cover these little babies.
Yeah.
Look, talking to you is like, I guess, having a reunion with a favorite teacher from high school, because so much of my youth was spent at the school of Zucker, Abrams, and Proft. So thank you, sir. It's my pleasure.
Sure. I appreciate it.
I would be extremely disappointed if any of our listeners were not aware of your work, and we do talk about them on the show, but just to add some context to our conversation, some of your films are Airplane, Naked Gun, Top Secret, BASEketball, amongst so many more. But as an Aussie, I have one question I'm really curious to know, is that how did you feel about the Australian title for Airplane upon release? It was called Flying High down here.
Well, this was because Universal thought that it would be confused with their airport movies. So, and they gave us a lot of trouble about a bunch of things. So they didn't want us to call it Airplane at all. And the compromise was it would be Airplane in North America, and then other things, all kinds of titles everywhere else. And so, yeah, UK was Flying High.
Yeah. Same here. And it took at least a decade or two for people to realize down here that it was actually called Airplane. A lot of people had no idea. So even now, Flying High is the title people recognize.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
it's strange.
It's strange.
But you and those aforementioned legends before your brother and well, I've lost my train of thought. And Jim Abrams, you essentially created an entire genre of comedy, and I guess in some ways you could say that you sort of picked up the torch from Mel Brooks and Carl Reiner, but there's something very unique about the way you delivered it. What do you think defines the Zucker brand?
Well, I think the change was almost akin to whatever happened before rock and roll. I mean, there was Sinatra, and it was a whole thing. Like, my parents didn't understand rock and roll at all, but there was that generational change. And what we did was took the comedians out of comedy, and it was also the reason why it was so hard to get it financed. I mean, we wrote the original script to Airplane in 1975, and as you know, I mean, it wasn't released until 1980. So there were a lot of good things about that circumstances also, because we were able to do Kentucky Fried Movie in between after we wrote Airplane, and so we really learned a lot about directing by working with John Landis.
For sure. That is a particular favorite of mine. I think that's up in the top three, perhaps, of my favorite films of yours, without a doubt. Was there a point in time where you recognized that you were on a winning formula?
Oh, it's a good question. I mean, we started in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Madison, Wisconsin, and we developed our own brand of humor even back then. This was in 1971. And so the reaction, we had a small theater called Kentucky Fried Theater, which of course became Kentucky Fried Movie. But back then, we were getting a huge reaction. I mean, audiences just went nuts. They had never seen this kind of humor before. And we knew we had hit on something. And one of the guys in the group and I went out to LA to scout out locations for theaters. And when we were out here in LA, then we saw some of the biggest sketch comedy groups there were, like the Committee and the Pitchell Players. And these were big groups, and a Second City, and we were just blown away by it. I mean, not by them so much but we thought, oh my God, we have machine guns in the Civil War. and we knew, so in answer to your question, I mean, we knew we had it then, and then and we started the theater in LA, and it was huge. That, again, very successful, because people had never seen anything like it. We did non-political humor. We were just being silly. We thought media and popular culture was more important than politics. And the groups at the time were doing Nixon jokes, and we thought how lame. And so we evolved our own style. And then when we saw this movie called 0 Hour, are you familiar with that?
Yep.
So that is the model. That was the model for Airplane, and that's when the idea occurred to us that we could remake this movie with serious characters, dispense with comedians, and just do it that way. That was the big breakthrough, I think. So
Definitely.
we absolutely, and then I also get asked the questions a lot. Were you surprised by the success of Airplane? Because we came out of nowhere, and then suddenly in 1980 we're on the cover of People and everywhere. It was the biggest hit of the summer, and we said actually not. We weren't surprised, without trying to be too arrogant about it. We had been, we had this experience of having done the live theater, and we just were very self-confident. And we had also been telling every studio and every production company, this is going to be a big hit. And of course, getting turned down everywhere. But so when it actually was a big hit, we weren't surprised because, we really did believe this would be a big hit.
Yeah, lesson to be learned. Back yourself in everything you do, for sure.
Yeah, we certainly were confident. And, we were very headstrong. And people would ask us, when we loaded up a U-Haul truck and went from the Midwest to LA, the big city, and they said, what was your plan B if you failed? And I was always make a lame joke like, well, I always had my dad's mattress business to fall back on, but really we had no plan B. We absolutely believed 100% that it would work. So
for sure.
we were pretty headstrong.
And so much of that story with Airplane is all about pushing boundaries as well. And Mel Brooks once famously said that terrible things, it's his job to make terrible things entertaining. Were there ever any no-go zones for you guys with your comedy?
Well, there's always a no-go zone. I don't think we're ever mean-spirited or, racist or, anything bad. But we do push boundaries and we make fun of anything that is taken seriously.
Yeah, sure.
And so I think one of the big things we pointed out was that movies are bad. Movies are complete bullshit, and you're being asked to believe this serious stuff in all the airport movies, and that was just one genre that we picked. Yeah. But later we picked the police genre. So we spoofed Clint Eastwood and Dirty Harry, and Pat Proft and I just wrote a script called Counterintelligence, spelled with a J, which is a spoof of the international spy thriller genre, Bourne, Bond, Mission Impossible.
Oh, fantastic. That's exciting. Is there a film of yours that you are most proud of and one that you think is your best?
One that I think what?
And one that you think is possibly your best.
Oh, well, I think the one I'm most proud of and the best still is Airplane, because it was an unbelievable experience. We were really three regular guys from the Midwest, and suddenly we got the biggest hit movie in the country. And coming out of, you can only come from nowhere once, and you can only make that splash once. I remember my parents held a screening, it was really the world premiere of Airplane. It was a week before it actually opened to the public at the Fox Bay Theater, which was our local theater in Milwaukee, which we used to go to see Three Stooges. And here was our movie playing for, our parents invited just the immediate city, to this thing. And it was, and that was amazing. And so it got a great reaction. And you can only do that once. I mean, we had other movies, we went back and we did, Top Secret screening and Naked Gun. But it was never the same. It was quite as big as Airplane.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
I know that I'll never have an experience like that again. And also, that's okay. I mean, I don't, you can also ruin your life by trying to top something constantly.
Trying to chase that feeling, yeah.
Yeah, you can't chase it. And I've had other successes and failures since then. And, otherwise, I mean, my life is pretty good. I got married, I had 2 great kids, and, things. But so I don't depend on, having a big hit to validate me or make me happy.
For sure, for sure. And speaking of greatness, I would like to ask: do you think that the Isle of Lucy joke is your best joke? Because I do.
Ever, yeah, that is one of the. I think over. There was another joke in Kentucky Fried Movie that was. I mean, there's so many great jokes in Kentucky Fried Movie. I may not recommend it as the greatest movie ever to watch all the way through because it's hit and miss, but you know what I love about Kentucky Fried Movie is that one run we have. Who are they? Is they're lost drunken men who don't know who they are and no longer care. And then and the Bruce Lee guy says, "And who are these? These are lost drunken men who don't know who they are but do care." And these are men who know who they are and care but don't drink. So it's like, I love that. So we always would do these runs, and that was one of our first who's on first routines.
Yeah, and that is sort of mirrored with the sight gag of the room that's bugged with all the microphones. Like it sort of flows on with that as well.
That's right. There's so many great things, and danger seekers. I mean, a lot of these things we couldn't do today.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, isn't it? I was going to ask you on that note is that, over the years, so many people have picked up the torch and run with it and almost flogged the spoof genre to death. Do you think there's room for parody movies now?
Absolutely. I mean, you need a good subject, but, the studio heads are so frightened, or the committees that they give it to, that, they don't want to do anything that's, I mean, Pat Proft and I have written a great script, The Counterintelligence, and it's funny without, I don't think it touches any nerves, because spoof is not about current pop culture. It's not a rom-com. It's a spoof of a certain genre. So I don't think we can be accused of the sexism, racism, all the isms that are going on in the cancel culture. But you never know. I mean, I think the studios are so frightened to do anything that, there's no good comedy now.
Yeah. Well, do you think that's something that, independently could be much more powerful?
Well, we're working on trying to get financing for Counterintelligence. And I also have a script. It's a film noir comedy.
Right.
And again, it's, dead serious like those film noirs were. And it's such a great script, but studios will be frightened of anything. You can't do a black and white movie, but they did The Artist, and I think it won the Oscar.
It did,
and a bunch of Oscars. So even though my company is an Oscar-free company, we don't we don't get anything like that.
Your accolades come to you in different ways. So.
Yes.
Before I let you run, I just want to touch on one thing. And many years ago, I heard you discussing Airplane as a side note on a commentary track, and I think it was the Kentucky Fried Movie. And you said that after all those years, you could never bring yourself to watch Airplane 2. And I'm wondering that, since you yourself have sort of dived into pre-established series like Scary Movie, has curiosity got the better of you with that one?
Never. I don't see any bad movie. So I won't go to a theater to see a bad movie. And so I have no curiosity, no desire to see Airplane 2. And in fact, it's actually worse than that. I don't want to see it because you can't unsee that stuff.
Yeah,
My son the other day was showing me this this thing with some comedian doing a thing about the Jeffrey Toobin, the guy that was caught masturbating on a Zoom call.
Yeah.
And then they had him his first day back on CNN, and my son thought it was amusing, but I couldn't watch it. I didn't want to see. Just like so icky. You can't unsee that stuff. So I didn't want to. And and there was also many years ago. Remember there was some YouTube video, 2 girls, 1 cup. It was totally. I think it was totally gross.
Yes.
And I never wanted to see it because you can't unsee that stuff. So I never had an interest in seeing Airplane 2. We Paramount offered it to us to do it, and our idea was to do. Bob Hayes and Julie Haggerty fly down the plane, and he takes her home to meet his family, and it's The Godfather.
Amazing.
He'd be Michael Corleone, and he's sucked into this mob, and we pitched it to Eisner and Katzenberg, who were the head of Paramount at the time. They loved it, and so they went to Francis, and he said no because he wanted to do Godfather 3. So I mean, in hindsight, they absolutely should have done Airplane 2 with us, but. We never blamed Eisner and Katzenberg. Eisner and Katzenberg were nothing but good to us.
Yeah.
It was a miracle that Airplane got made. It was a miracle that it got made at Paramount, which was the best studio because of people like Frank Mancuso, Michael Eisner, and Jeff Katzenberg.
Excellent. Well, I want to thank you for not doing a Toobin on this Zoom call. That's for sure. I do appreciate it.
I'll make sure this thing is blocked and I know how to press the right buttons on this thing. God, it's like, no, this thing, I mean, I am old, but at least I know how to work the buttons. I mean, I know how to press leave. There's a big red thing saying leave. Oh, God.
I tell you what you do want to do. Do yourself a favor and watch his on-air apology, because that's a thing of beauty. Who fronts up and admits all that? Oh, hilarious. But I don't like seeing people humiliated. When our family used to watch American Idol, and they know I didn't like to watch when somebody like forgot the words or went off key. I don't like that. Or can't watch ice skating competitions because I'm afraid they'll fall. You can't. Yeah.
Anyways.
It's like picking the low-hanging fruit for sure. But look, I can't think of a better way for us to celebrate parody films and comedy spoofs than by talking with one of the founding fathers himself. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Sure. My pleasure.
Welcome to Bonehead Weekly Fun Size. Did I say that slow enough for Ben?
I think you did.
Okay, James, you got a little head there. Pat Proft, David Zucker. I'm jealous because Pat Proft told us no. But keep going, Chad.
Yeah, so we're going to be talking about spoof movies today.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about one that is critically panned, but I think for all 3 of us, it holds a special place. I am talking about the parody of The Exorcist, Repossessed.
Repossessed, I haven't seen in a long time, but I laughed my ass off when I saw it, and nobody liked it, and it did no business.
It still gets, it's not very well acclaimed, but I laughed nonstop about this. And this is one of those early Leslie Nielsen movies when he was just going into straight parodies. When this is the start of it, starred Leslie Nielsen. It brought Linda Blair back. And the reason I thought about this week when I got this is we just lost Ned Beatty this week. Rest in peace, Ned Beatty. So he's in it. And it also stars the lead of Return of the Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, Anthony Stark. But it's a great movie that parodies Exorcist movies. It has a great montage of Leslie Nielsen in a gym trying to work out to get prepared to go do the exorcism. And again, Ned Beatty being Ned Beatty. It's worth watching if you haven't seen it. It's one of the lesser known spoofs that's kind of been forgotten a little bit. Highly recommend checking that out.
Ned Beatty's got the great line that I still remember, even though I haven't seen the movie in forever, where the little dog tries to bite him. He's a televangelist, correct? And he goes, "You little shit zoo." I said shih tzu.
And right? It wasn't, and it's not even a Shih Tzu.
It's not even a Shih Tzu. So when people ask me about folks who who influenced me. I always say Python, Mel Brooks, Sam Raimi, those folks, but Zaz, Zucker, Abram Zucker, which also Pat Proft goes with that because he wrote in the original Kentucky Theater. I love those movies. Those, oh my God, I'm not even going to talk about Scary Movie. Even like, what's those shitty ones called, like Hero Movie and all those other ones? They don't get it. They don't understand
Superhero
it.
movie.
They just don't understand comedy, and they don't understand spoofs. I'm going to say something that is everyone's favorite, or one of everyone's favorite. The poster's right around my back here. It's The Naked Gun. It is one of my favorite spoofs of all time. As much as I love Airplane, and Airplane has more laughs per minute, they voted on this Entertainment Weekly, if anybody remembers, about 15, 20 years ago, called it the funniest movie of all time. The Naked Gun is not only one of the funniest movies of all time, it's one of my favorite movies of all time. Every once in a while, I still put that or The Naked Gun 2.5 on, and it makes me laugh if I'm having a bad day.
Same here.
Right up there with Blazing Saddles. It's one of my favorite movies of all time.
I was going to say Young Frankenstein, and then I thought, you know what? I need to say Silence of the Hams so I can see Joe get angry. But no, I'm going to go with one that doesn't get much love anymore, and it should. Our Man Flint. Our Man Flint,
that's true.
If you've never seen it, needs to get more attention. A, it's where they got the name of the villain for a certain Die Hard movie. B, the theme has been used again in Austin Powers.
Yep.
They use it in tons of other places. It's a very well-known theme.
Austin Powers ripped off In Like Flint and Our Man Flint like no other, and no one says anything about it. And I like Austin Powers, but it ripped off more of that than it did actual Bond.
Well, and Hudson Hawk uses part of the theme from, I mean, the cultural legacy, and people tend to not remember Our Man Flint or the sequel, In Like Flint. It is a spy spoof of its time, and it makes fun of Bond directly. There's even a line, is it Spectre? No, it's bigger than Spectre. I mean, it constantly is just making fun of and pointing out issues with Bond and all of that stuff. And so, you know, it is from 1966, but it is probably one of the first spy spoofs of its type. Deserves some credit. Our Man Flint. If you've never seen it, check it out.
James Coburn. Real quick, one last thing for any of you out there old enough to remember, there were also other spoofs that starred a certain Dino called Mad Helm. Sorry, I had to pause for a second. I forgot the name Mad Helm. Check those out too. They're not as good as In Like Flint, but there's several Mad Helm pictures, and they got some great jokes about Sinatra in them. This has been
and before we end Bonehead, since these two's got two, check out Black Dynamite. It's amazing.
Oh, and Harlan Ellison wrote a third Flint movie that never got made. There you go.
This has been Bonehead Weekly Fun Size that took 62 minutes.
You may have noticed in that segment that the Boneheads did reference Pat Proft being on the show. Funny story about that. Pat Proft was supposed to be on this show. He's going to join us. He's the guy, if you don't know, he wrote Police Academy, Bachelor Party, Real Geniuses, Hot Shots, Naked Gun, and he directed Wrongfully Accused, which is one of my favorite Leslie Nielsen films. And he had agreed to appearing on the show, but when push came to shove and we started making arrangements and schedules, and he fell into radio silence. And sadly, we were not able to make that happen, which is a shame because it would have been a real celebration of his work. But we ended up with the big gun himself, so that's all I care about. Ben, here are some more random spoof movies for you that I think are worth a mention, just to throw them out there. Some oddities too. There was an Italian spoof from the 90s called Chicken Park. I got a kick out of that one back in the day.
Have you seen it? Have you actually watched the movie?
Many times over. It's terrible.
Yeah. Like, I can't imagine. It sounds like a kind of like a child molester movie.
What? Well, my mates and I in high school used to watch it and quote it all the time, but Troma also released one called Viewer Discretion Advised, which was like a Kentucky Fried Movie style of sketch movie. That always tickled me.
And they did Cannibal the Musical as well.
They sure did. Let's not forget about Plump Fiction and 2001: A Space Travesty. What a banger.
Is Troma's War a parody?
Kinda. It's a masterpiece.
What about Young Doctors in Love? And Stitches. Stitches a parody? I don't know if it's a parody.
Yeah.
No, Young Doctors in Love definitely is.
All right, well, what's your next banger? Lay it on me.
Look, I went a bit more modern for my next one. For some reason in my head, this was the kind of the first of the more modern parody movies that, you know, kind of preceded the American Pie kind of, rediscovery of 80s genre movies. And this is, of course, not another teen movie from 2001.
Of course it is, yes. And that was a welcome spoof movie at the time. I remember it, being fresh, fresh take on the whole parody thing.
Yeah. And it's great. Like it's got a great cast, and it does, like, including like Kyla Lee. And the funny thing about Kyla Lee, I was reading like at the time, and this was like the kind of one of the first things she ever did, but she was a big time cokehead. And one of the reasons that she got off coke is because Joel Gallen, the director of another teen movie, at one point said, "Wow, you're really thin." Now this was in like an interview, and I'm like, yeah, that's the reason why girls, especially actresses, get off coke, because they've become too thin in Hollywood. It's the most ridiculous thing I've ever read. And I reckon complete horseshit. But anyway, it's Kyla Lee, Chris Evans, Eric Christian Olsen, Jamie Presley, Dean Richmond, who funnily enough was in Scream 3, Mia Kirshner, Randy Quaid, Ron Lester, who basically plays the same character that he played in Varsity Blues, Cody McMahon, who was the horny little kid in Bring It On, who basically plays the same character in this, Lacey Chabert, Sam Levine from Freaks and Geeks, Paul Gleason from The Breakfast Club reprises his role, which he would then go and do later once again in Van Wilder Party Liaison. Ed Lauder pops up, Mr. T, Molly Ringwald, Josh Radnor from How I Met Your Mother, Oz Perkins turns up, Melissa Joan Hart plays herself in it, and Samira Armstrong turns up, and it took me ages to figure out who she was. Like, I kept looking at the character going, why do I know her? What do I know her from? And it's because in the movie she's part of a co-joined twin, and they're joined by the head, and she's in a wig, so it's very hard to tell. But this movie does take the piss out of movies like Bring It On, 10 Things I Hate About You, Breakfast Club, Pretty in Pink, Drive Me Crazy, She's All That, Cruel Intentions, Never Been Kissed has a pretty big part in it, Can't Hardly Wait, American Beauty, American Pie. Although, funnily enough, the American Pie stuff is really all Randy Quaid fucking pies throughout the whole movie. Oh, and Serena Vincent being the naked foreign exchange student, who I think at the beginning of the movie she's like, "There's why have you come here?" I've just come here to have sex with awkward American boys who can't get American pussy, or something like that. He says something like that to the principal, and the principal, I wish I'd written down his name. He's the divorce lawyer in Fletch. He's in tons of stuff. He's really good. He always plays like a kind of slimy type authority figure. But he's the divorce lawyer in Fletch who's actually banging his wife. But yeah, it looks really good. And there's some good kind of references in it, like the high school they go to is John Hughes High, and the dining hall is Anthony Michael Dining Hall, which is like lots of little kind of great gags in it.
Yes, that's as good as the Isle of Lucy joke that I talked about with David.
Yeah.
Damn, that's a good one. It had a great soundtrack too.
Yeah, it did, like a really good soundtrack. And like Marilyn and Kyla Lee's actually in the Marilyn Manson video clip.
Yeah, so strange. But all right. So for my next recommendation, I'm going to go with one I actually only discovered last week, which you know all about because I wouldn't stop talking about it. So 2015, this is a movie that came along to take the piss out of Liam Neeson's Taken series, and I found it to be an unexpectedly hilarious movie. It's called Tooken, starring Lee Tergesen, who's the I Love You rocker from Wayne's World. Remember that guy? I love you.
Yes. And he's the guy, like, I love Lee Tergesen. He's in a bunch of stuff, but he's the guy from Oz.
Yeah, I know.
Like the horrifying things that happened to him in Oz. His character's transformation in Oz is one of the most miraculous things that ever committed to TV film.
Well, talking about commitment, he commits to this movie. Like, he is great in this movie, and this one to me feels like it's one of the movies that's more aligned with the Zucker universe than a lot of parodies. For me, it just felt like it was fresh like that. it kind of had a serious streak to it with a lot of funny stuff going on, and there is a narrative there that sort of keeps things, chugging along at an idiotic pace. I just love the fact that he's a CIA agent or former CIA agent who just keeps losing stuff. Everything's taken from him.
Everything's taken. You mean taken from him?
Everything taken's not a real word. Oh, and his daughter's virginity is about to be taken, and that phone call is hilarious.
Yeah.
And I love this. I know who you are. You expect to live off this family? Well, that's not going to happen. I've got no money. And anyway, look, I don't know. This one is free on Tubi. Anyone can watch it. It's it's just a really funny movie. Did you like it? Because I know you watched it after I told you it was great.
Yeah, after you talked about it, I did really like it. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'm just trying to find out because I think that the the stewardess in it, right at the start of the film,
who loses her skirt.
She's one of the producers. Oh, she's one of the producers of the film. I was like, oh, wow.
She's telling him that everything's been taken. My skirt's been taken. Then he snaps a photo and he goes, "Thank you."
Yeah. Oh, thank you. That's because he gets the thing. Like, if you don't, what's the threat? It's like if how'd you get this number? It's a closed circuit. And he goes, "I'm just going to take something you love." Well, I don't love anything. What it is? Can I get another vomit bag? I'm sorry, all the vomit bags have been taken. Can I get a drink? I'm sorry, all the drinks have been taken. You believe me now? It's
and they're not the highest caliber cameos, but you do have some good ones in there. You got Donnie Wahlberg and Lucas Haas and Ethan Suplee, and Margaret Cho plays Brownfinger, and that is hilarious.
She is great as the villain, but like I love that her evil plan is shoving explosives up little dogs' asses.
I know. That's why she's got a brown finger. She's like, it's a birthmark.
Yeah. That's why she's called Brownfinger.
But look, I am so happy that I stumbled across this one. I was not expecting much from it, but I'll tell you what, anyone that's listening, you're welcome. Go and watch Tuken. It's fucking hilarious.
I have to say, Tubi is a great resource. There's also after I watched Tuken, a Steven Seagal movie popped up. I can't remember what it's called, that I'd never heard of it before, and I ended up watching that as well, and it was great. Like total horseshit, but great.
So another brand of spoof movies that we haven't really touched upon, the Wayans brothers and some of their parodies, which are arguably one of their best, has to be Don't Be a Menace to South Central While Drinking Your Juice in the Hood, which in my day was the single most stolen title from the video store.
Oh, really?
Constantly replacing that one.
In the video store I worked at, it was Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man, and How High were the two.
Yeah.
Were the two that
How High makes sense.
That kept disappearing.
But the Wayans brothers also went on to make the Haunted House movies and 50 Shades of Black, which is actually a bit of a pisser.
Don't forget their first one. I'm Gonna Get You, Sucker, which is
of course,
black superhero movie. He goes, "What makes you qualified to be a black superhero?" Well, I played college football. Oh, okay, fair enough.
And of course, they struck gold when they made the Scary Movie 1 and 2 before David Zucker took over the franchise. And so with that, it is time to introduce Chloe, who is new to the team, and she's going to take a deep dive into that giant afro muff with her reliable weed whacker.
Jesus Christ. Did you tell her what her intro was going to be?
Nah. Baptism by fire.
Hello, new friends. I'm Chloe from Movie Night with the Ritchie Girls, and I am so excited to have joined Good Movie Monday family. As we're talking spoof movies this week, I feel I have a responsibility to try and outdo those Bonehead Weekly guys in as many innuendos as I can fit in possible. So let's see how we go. Now, when I thought of spoof movies, what instantly came to my mind were movies like Hot Shots and Robin Hood Men in Tights, and even the Rick Moranis classic Spaceballs. But today, I'm going to be focusing on a spoof franchise that I ultimately grew up with and have a huge soft spot for. That's what she said. The Scary Movie franchise. Now, I've never had a particularly strong stomach when it comes to horror, so when the Scary Movie came on the scene, I felt as though this was definitely something that I could get behind. It takes the piss out of scary movies. Perfect. It features daddy-daughter meth jokes, Polaroids of micro-penises, and Carmen Electra providing that early 2000s semi-nudity. My only criticism? Not enough was that. The franchise sports 5 movies, which if you're in Australia, you can catch them on Stan. They're each as silly and whimsical and cringy as the last. The first 2 movies were directed by Keenan Ivory Wayans, the 3rd and 4th installments were led by David Zucker, and the 5th directed by Malcolm D. Lee. The franchise features a multitude of well-known actors, and at the helm of the first 4 movies is the hilarious and talented Anna Faris, who plays Cindy. Faris, who despite being unknown before this, shows us just the tip of the iceberg as to how funny she really can be. The Scary Movie franchise also sports other huge Hollywood names like Charlie Sheen, spoof queen Shannon Elizabeth, SNL royalty Sherry O'Terry, David Cross, Tim Curry, and legendary spoof king Leslie Nielsen, and then about 1,000 more other insanely famous faces. What surprised me the most about these films, though, is just how much money they were raking into the box office. The late 90s and the early 2000s movie scene was ripe with teen horror, just begging to be spoofed. Take Scary Movie 1, for example, which took inspiration from Scream and I Know What You Did Last Summer. The film itself only cost $19 million to make, which is a relatively low budget. And then it brought in $278 million worldwide. So if you're wondering why they made 4 more, there's your answer. If you are one of 6 people in the entire world who have not seen these movies, now you're a little bit curious, I'd say, so I'm going to paint you a mental picture. The opening sequence features Carmen Electra in all of her blonde glory, running away from the killer. She clumsily loses her shirt and skirt, oh no, and proceeds to slow-mo run through the sprinklers, Baywatch style in her undies. She does a hair flip. The killer catches up to her and stabs her in her big fake boobies. Spoiler alert, she survives that, only to get mown down by her father, who's getting a gobby from his wife while driving. So, in summary, lots and lots and lots of boob action. You're welcome, Ben. I was only 10 when the first movie came out, so obviously a lot of it went way over my head at the time, but I have rewatched these movies countless times since, and ultimately I credit the Scary Movies for taking my love of comedy just to a whole new level. All of them feature a nostalgic place in my heart. The pure dumbness, the quotability, it's just not easily matched these days. They literally make me laugh out loud every single time and make me scream, "Run, bitch! Run!" every time as well. That's all from me today. I hope you go back and re-watch these classics and then just laugh till it hurts. Have a happy Monday, friends.
Oh, how good was that? Fantastic. If you like what Chloe does, then please find her podcast, which is Movie Night with the Ritchie Girls, which she hosts with her mum. It's lots of fun. But Chloe will also be presenting a brand new Wednesday night video each week with me on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. So add that to your calendar. Thank you, Chloe. It's awesome to have you on the team. And Ben, she spoke about Scary Movie, and boy, did that movie open the floodgates to a whole lot. You mentioned not another teen movie, but then we had date movie and superhero movie and epic movie and disaster movie. And the guys behind that made Meet the Spartans and Vampires Suck and Stan Helsing and Starving Games and The Legend of Awesomus Maximus. And the guiltiest pleasure of mine was Super Fast, Super Furious. I love that one.
Jesus, I've never even heard of Super Fast, Super Furious. But like, I don't parody. How do you parody a franchise that already parodies itself in its own universe? Like they go to space, Glenn. They go to space.
But there is one called a parody movie.
Yeah, right.
Do you remember when Scary Movie came out? At the same time, there was another one that was called Shriek If You Know What I Did Last Friday the 13th.
Yes, I do remember that. Was that
Tiffany Amber Thiessen?
Tiffany Amber Thiessen, yeah.
Yeah. That one kind of just didn't gain any traction, but it was actually quite funny.
No, I remember the cover vividly, but I don't think I actually watched it.
Well, maybe you will, maybe you won't. Add it to your list.
Well, I do like Tiffany Amber Thiessen. Who doesn't like Saved by the Bell? Not this guy.
One more recommendation to go. I'm going to make this one snappy. So let me take you back to 2003. Heath Ledger's Ned Kelly had just been released, and in turn, Abe Forsyth gave us Ned, the comedy spoof that is not all that far removed, I don't think, from Yahoo series' Young Einstein. But Forsyth plays a young Ned Kelly who rides a pony and dreams of being a magician, and I think that's hilarious. And his dad was played by Jeremy Sims, who's he's a struggling rubber farmer, which I also think is hilarious. And he it's a who's who of Aussie talent too. You got Damon Herriman, Felix Williamson, Michaela Barnes, Scott Major, Tony Barry, Chris Lilly, Grant Bowler, Cornelia Francis, Andrew Daddo, Jason Donovan, Nash Edgerton, for fuck's sake.
I was going to say, it sounds almost like at the start there, I thought it was going to be an almost Always Greener cast reunion.
Yeah. Dude, I hadn't seen it in a long time, and I watched it last week, and I forgot how actually on point the comedy was. It is really sharp, and it's really witty, and it's loaded to the brim with gags. And when one gag might fail, there's another one right behind it to pick things back up again. And most of them hit target. So, yeah, if you've never seen Ned, I don't know if it's easy or difficult to come by, but I do highly recommend it. The fact that there's a rubber farmer in it and they eat rubber for dinner. You will be quiet and you'll eat your rubber. I love it. It's good. It's good fun. Abe Forsyth has also gone on to make, was it Little Monsters? That zombie film from last year or the year before.
He's having quite a career, the old Abe Forsyth. From the dorky brother in Always Greener to,
And he happens to be married to one of the finest Australian actresses of them all.
Are you talking about Helen Dellimore?
Yes.
I think they might be divorced. I think they might have separated.
Really?
She's the only person I know who's been in a Yahoo Serious movie and on whatever the Australian version of Broadway is.
It's true. She was in Wicked, played Glinda, the Good Witch.
Mm.
Anyway, I said I'd make it snappy, so I have delivered on my promise. What's your next one?
I'm going to make mine even snappier, and I'm going to go back even further to 1981 and talk about student bodies.
Oh, yes.
The can't not talk about the ultimate horror parody from I think it would have been probably the first horror parody.
Yep.
I think. Directed by Mickey Rose, and there is someone else apparently also silently directed it, kind of like Spielberg and Poltergeist. Controversial controversy. But it stars Kristen Ritter, Matthew Goldsby, but the star of the movie is actually the Stick, aka Patrick Boone-Varnell, who plays Malvert the janitor, who is possibly the funniest. He's the funniest, most awkward character in comedy history, and it's worthwhile just watching the movie just for him. And of course, this is a kind of a parody of Halloween and Friday the 13th and Prom Night and all those kind of 70s, late 70s, early 80s horror movies. And basically and I think Scream kind of owes a lot to this movie. Like it's a voice on a phone / galoshes wearing killer who only kills teens who are having sex, as is one of the 80s horror rules. And he does so, like he always does it with a random object that he finds nearby, like including, I think he uses paper clips in one, and an eggplant and stuff. Like it's all kind of ridiculous things that he kills people with. He kills a couple of teens in a cow float at a parade, and two teens having sex in the back of a car at a funeral, which of course that's and all of the guys, that's the great thing. It's always in inappropriate places. And the guys are always like, whatever it is, that's what gets me hot. Like cow floats, bull floats, that's what gets me hot. Funerals get me hot. I think there's one time they're under the bleachers and everyone's just dropping trash all over them at a football game. It's like trash just gets me so hot. They try and convince the girls to have sex with them, and it's it is of its time, but it is hilarious. Definitely worth checking out. My favorite gag in the whole movie is right at the start. It's a total Halloween kind of rip off where the babysitter gets murdered, but the parents come home, and as the wife is kind of running through the house screaming a lot, and the dad walks into the kitchen and there's a bit of KFC on the floor, but it's like someone's taken a bite out of it and dropped it, and the bite has fallen out of their mouth, and he sees the KFC on the floor and goes, broken, and he picks up the chicken and he picks up the bite and he kind of puts them back together and then gets some sticky tape and wraps it together and puts it back in the fridge. It's just the most ridiculous gag. It is hilarious.
Oh, man. Well, you were right. That was much snappier than my recommendation.
No, it was not at all.
It's Adam here from Adam's Just Seen and Triple M with another Good Movie Monday recommendation. This week we are doing movie spoofs, and the spoof that I've picked is Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story. Now, this ridiculous, goofy, funny movie came hot on the heels of Ray and Walk the Line. And because it was in such close proximity to those films, which did so well at the Academy Awards and the box office, that this whole area of the music biopic was so fresh in people's minds that it plays, it hews so close to the line that if this didn't have John C. Reilly's goofy face in the center and had this same framework, you might think that it was part of some kind of unofficial trilogy of films. But director Jake Kadson here, with help from Judd Apatow, populates this with so many funny actors and so many funny scenes, and they know that there is something inherently almost cynical about this, like great man revisiting his whole life before going out on stage and playing this concert. This movie has a huge amount of really rock solid gags. It's almost a shame that this movie came out in 2007, because just a few years ago we had another resurgence of these type of movies, and I'd like to see another spoof and a parody of things like Bohemian Rhapsody and A Star Is Born. But I think that, this is just a really good stoner hungover movie, but it really solidified John C. Reilly as being like a comic powerhouse. Now, I mean, he was always and always will be a fantastic character actor, and I think everyone thought that he was funny, but we were kind of laughing at him in a way. We weren't laughing kind of with him. And here, I know that he came off Talladega Nights, and if you had told me that, that Will Ferrell's partner in crime in comedic filmmaking would be this guy, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, I just wouldn't kind of believed it. But John is so comfortable of making an absolute dickhead of himself, and here he just does it ad nauseum. And so I think that so John can carry an entire comedic movie, one that's populated with cameos from everyone from Paul Rudd, Jenna Fisher, Kristen Wiig, Harold Ramis, everyone's in this movie. So if you manage to slip this, because this is definitely, I think, kind of slotted into cult fandom at this stage. Like when it came out, I watched it like 5 times. I loved it. I couldn't get enough of it, but it might have just slipped underneath your radar. So if you can track down Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story, do, and I think that you'll love it. And maybe even watch Ray and Walk the Line beforehand to give an extra purpose to the gags.
Well, if you've listened to the show, you know what I'm about to say. Adam Ross is the chairman of the Australian Film Critics Association, and you can hear him every week on Triple M. Find his Facebook page, which is called Adam's Just Seen. And I guess get in touch with him if you want to banter more about movies. So that does bring us to the end of the show. A couple more spoof movies that I must mention because no one else is talking about them. Adam Rifkin made a movie called National Lampoon's Homo Erectus, and I think that's a hilarious movie. Spy Hard, of course, Down Periscope, which I think Ben loves.
I do love Down Periscope.
And who can forget Delta Farce?
Jesus. Of all the movies.
And I know, your old mate, Jim Wynorski, directed a series of Bear Wench Project movies, mate.
He certainly did. And they're excellent. And I don't know if he did any of the Sex Files as well.
The fact that your face lit up and everyone missed it.
I forgot the great ones. The what was it? Seduction Cinema did what was it? Playmate of the Apes, Lord of the G-Strings, Spider Babe. They did all those parodies there. I wish I didn't even think of them until just now, but I would have loved to have done Playmate of the Apes with Debbie Rochon. Like they did some. There's a great makeup in them. Misty Monday stars in all those movies. There's a Tomb Raider one with Misty Monday and her sister, which was particularly shit. Like they're all. I mean, they're fucking horrible. By great, I mean like outrageously bad, kind of soft core faux. They're all like faux lesbian kind of soft. Yeah, they're terrible but hilarious.
Well, I don't know how to tie that in with what I'm about to say, but there is a movie turning 20 years old this year. It's called Baconhead, which is another one that Troma did release. It was directed by a guy called Ray Mahoney, and it's a movie I actually adore, and I've been trying to put together a video for our social media with a conversation with Ray all about that. The first attempt to record that didn't go as planned, just due to technical snafus and whatnot, but we'll try to put that together for you all. Baconhead is a very funny movie. But that's about it. That's it for the show. I hope we've inspired you to go out and spoof all over the place. Of course, we are sponsored by some amazing people: Four Pillars Gin, Astor Theatre, Luna Drive-In, Eagle Entertainment, and Umbrella Entertainment. We have a whole lot of prizes from most of them up on our website, so visit goodmoviemonday.com if you want to enter. But for now, thanks to Jarret, Guillermo, Adam, Joe, Chad, and James, and once again, thank you, and welcome to Chloe, a fantastic first show for her, and also thanks to Tia, who helps behind the scenes on social media. And thank you all for listening. We're going to be back next week to do it all again. Cheers, Ben. It's always fun. Are you all spoofed out?
I'm spoof laden, spoof ridden, spoofed out.
Well, one more parody to see you out. This is the opening song from the Zucker Brothers and Abrams classic Top Secret. This is Skeet Surfing.
Everybody had a 12 gauge and a surfboard too. You see him shooting and surfing, hear them Malibu. Because it's totally bitchin', riding waves to blast clay pigeons. And it's so neat shooting ski while you're riding out the heavies all day. First wave, don't get tired. Second wave, aim higher. Third wave, pull inside. Skeet surfing, it's alright. We're waxing down our surfboards and loading up our traps. Tell the teacher we're shooting, we're never coming back. I've got a gun rack in my Chevy for when the surf and the flak get heavy. And we'll have fun with our guns till a lifeguard takes our ammo away. First wave, don't get tired. Second wave, aim higher. Third wave, pull on the tires. Skeet surfing, it's alright. First wave, get the knack. Second wave, pull on the trap. Third wave, how is that? Skeet surfing, it's alright. Sharing sunsets with my favorite girl. When we shoot the curl, we really shoot the curl. First wave, don't get tired. Second wave, aim higher. Third wave, pull on fire. First wave, get on the knack. Second wave, pull up a trap. Third wave, how's that? I wish they all could be double barreled. Wish they all could be double barreled.